everyone, and welcome to another episode of In the Studio. I'm Lynn Weaver. The program is brought to you by Davis Media Access and broadcast on Davis Community Television. That's Comcast Channel 15 and AT&T U-verse Menu 99. We're also online at dctv.davismedia.org. Well, today I have a very interesting guest here with me. His name is Jeff Hudson, and if you don't know him yet, he's a reporter for the Davis Enterprise, and we are going to talk about the latest news in Davis. Now, Jeff and I go back a long time when we were at Capital Public Radio. Jeff is also a regular correspondent with Capital Public Radio, mostly the art critic for their shows, and he's also a theater review for the Sacramento News and Reviews. Welcome, Jeff.
Good to be here, Lynn.
It's wonderful to see you, and I know we have a lot to talk about today. You're a Davis resident, you're a reporter for the Enterprise, and as far as I know, you are the go-to person if you want to know about what's the ins and outs, political and otherwise.
Well, there's always something going on, and of course we did just have an election in June.
Tell us about that.
Well, it was a very interesting election. By and large, up and down the state, it was a low turnout election.
I
saw the Secretary of State's website said it was 18 or 19% voter turnout.
Incredible.
However, in Davis, it was a 39% voter turnout.
Still a little lower.
Low by Davis standards. You know,
Yes.
in November of 2012, when we had a presidential election, it was a 78% voter turnout.
Not surprisingly.
But 39% was good for most parts of the state, but low. So it was an election that had several interesting ballot propositions on it. There was, of course, Measure P, which had to do with the water rates, and
infamous.
And it's been discussed at great length. It was interesting to me because the voters of Davis approved the water system in March of 2013, I believe it was, Measure I, if I'm remembering, and it was 54% yes and the other part no. But then in June of this year, when they were asked about the water rates, the voters said yes to Measure P, which means they rejected the water rates by 51% to 49%.
Very close.
Very close. It was, they had to count all of the late ballots. You know how a lot of people vote by mail nowadays?
Yes, of course.
And a lot of people in this election waited until Election Day and then turned in their vote by mail ballot at the polling place.
I didn't know that.
Now, what you have to do then, if you're the elections department, is you have to compare ballot by ballot the signature on the envelope against the signature on the voter registration card.
So it's a long process.
This took a couple of extra days, and so it really wasn't until about a week after the election that we really knew how several of the local election results went. So Measure P passed narrowly, but it passed.
What does it mean exactly?
What it means is that the water rates have been rejected.
Frozen.
Well, rejected.
Rejected.
I mean, the water rates that had been adopted are out. What else it means is a rather complicated question, because the city now has to put together new water rates, and nobody really knows at this point exactly what they're going to look like. I'm not going to get out my crystal ball and predict what the city is going to do, but there's a little bit of a correlation. You know how about a week ago there was a court decision regarding teacher tenure laws and some other things, the Vergara versus California?
Yes.
Those state laws were deemed unconstitutional by the Superior Court judge in LA, but we don't know what new laws might get passed by the legislature. So this is a somewhat comparable local situation where the water rates have been rejected, but we don't know entirely what the new rates are going to look like.
So we rejected, the collective we rejected it blindly.
Well, and narrowly. It was 51% to 49%.
What do you think it's going to happen, Jeff?
I predict long and interesting city council meetings in the next few months as they figure out how to, and that's as close as I'm going to go. I'm not going to predict, and the city council isn't really my beat anyway. We also had a very interesting race for county superintendent.
Oh, yes.
And a lot of people are kind of unfamiliar with the office of county superintendent. It is an elected.
True.
It is an elective office. However, the last time before this year that it was on the ballot was 16 years ago, and then the subsequent elections, Jorge Ayala, the longtime incumbent, ran unopposed, so he wasn't. There was nothing on the ballot. There was no campaign.
Nothing, yes.
So there are a lot of people who've lived in Yolo County for 15, 16 years who don't realize that we actually do vote on the county superintendent.
They had forgotten.
Well, it hadn't been a contest for a very long time.
So who is the new elected official?
The new county superintendent is Jesse Ortiz. He's from Woodland. He's been a Woodland School District trustee. He's currently been serving on the County Board of Education, which is a countywide thing, but as the new superintendent, he has turned in his resignation.
That's right.
As a trustee on the County Board of Education, because you can't be superintendent and a trustee on the Board of Education at the same time.
Yes, and he's also a professor, I believe.
Right, at Woodland College, and also a counselor there. He's very big on preschool and child care type programs,
which we sorely need.
Right, and the county office of education has been handling Head Start programs, and there's a new state law. In the state budget, there's money for expanding transitional kindergarten programs for lower income 4-year-olds. So I expect that the county office of education may get a little more involved with that kind of thing. I know that Jesse told me when I interviewed him for the campaign that he wanted to see more action from the county office of education in that area.
Well, that's very interesting, and it is a trend, a national trend too.
Yeah.
To take because of Obama, and also because we realized in Washington D.C., for example, they have this system now that all preschoolers can go free basically all day.
Well, there's abundant social research that indicates that if you have early childhood education programs, kids come into kindergarten fully prepared, and then they do better in school. And so a lot of researchers
not
feel
surprisingly, they discovered America again.
Right. Money spent on early childhood education programs is widely considered to be money well spent. So
of course, yes. So that's good. He's a good candidate. I mean, he will be a good. He's also involved in the office of the district attorney, the Yolo County district attorney. He's on the board of the multicultural advisory panel, something like that. So that's very nice.
He's been involved with lots of committees and commissions and things like that.
Yeah.
Now, of course, in Davis, election season never really ends. And so there's another election coming in November. And
tell me about that one.
Well, there's going to be a school board race. and I've been covering the school board since 1998, so this will be interesting. This will be the first time that we will have 4 out of the 5 seats on the school board on the ballot at the same time. Usually you get 2 in 1 year, and then 2 years later you get 3. Owing to the fact that 3 seats are up, and then there's a vacancy that was created when one of the trustees resigned earlier this year. And so you're going to have 4 seats up, and this is going to be the first time that's happened. And it'll be a very, very interesting campaign. Now, when there was an appointment made, there were a number of candidates who filed to be considered as appointees for the open seat. And several of them indicated that they intend to run in November.
Yes.
The filing period, however, doesn't start until sometime in July. So what we're waiting for is to see when the candidates actually start filing, who actually files. It's one thing to say you're going to run. It's another to actually fill out the form, raise the money, prepare the ballot argument, et cetera, et cetera.
It's going to be a very interesting race there.
It is,
and very important.
Well, yeah, and all kinds of things are happening with the school district because, the new Common Core standards are being implemented, and there's the whole new funding structure under the local control funding formula and all that kind of stuff. So there's just changes going on in the school district all over the place.
All over, yeah.
And then we're basically going to have, with 4 out of 5 trustees joining the board, very possibly all of them new. We're still waiting to hear from 1 or 2 of the incumbents whether they're going to run again. But we could end up with a school board that has a whole lot of fairly new trustees on it. Mm-hmm. And so you're going to have all these big issues, and you're going to have several new trustees, possibly as many as 4 new trustees. So it's going to be a very, very interesting situation.
Do they have to file with a particular party?
Oh no, it's a nonpartisan
It's a
office.
non-partisan. I thought that, but I wanted you to confirm.
Yeah,
it,
no,
yes.
it's a nonpartisan office, and you fill out a petition and you file paperwork with the county the county elections office in Woodland, and that's the procedure.
Well, that's reassuring.
But
yes.
but the fundraising is already underway for some of them, and it's going to be interesting. Usually the school board campaigns don't really heat up until everybody comes back from summer vacation. Once the school year starts and the parents and the kids are back in town and all of that, then it starts to get busy.
Well,
after that.
they're on that particular schedule of things.
And this will coincide with the gubernatorial election and various other things that'll be happening
Tell us
in
about
November.
that.
Well, just very briefly, you're going to have at the top of the ticket Jerry Brown and.
Is he going to run for a fifth term?
Jerry Brown?
Yes.
Oh, it would be his fourth actually.
Is it fourth?
Right.
Is it allowed?
Well, he did 2 terms in the 70s, and now he's doing.
But they're not consecutive.
Right.
So he.
Now, when I was a university student at UC Santa Barbara, Jerry Brown was governor back in the 70s, and here I am, a middle-aged guy in my late 50s, and suddenly Jerry Brown is governor again and running for re-election again. So I have a little deja vu experience with all of this.
Yes.
Then the other candidate will be Neil Kashkari, who's the Republican candidate.
Yes.
And so that'll be interesting. I'm not seeing a whole lot of people. Did you see any campaign signs for the gubernatorial race
Not yet.
anywhere in Davis during the June election?
No.
I didn't see them either.
No.
And so I'm waiting to see if people get more interested in the statewide elections in November than they did in June, because in June it was all the local contests.
Yes, I know.
Lots and lots of signs about the city council race.
Oh,
and about
enormous
things like that.
amount of
Right.
mail.
But you never would have known there was a statewide election going on in June locally from the yard signs.
No, it's interesting. Well, people get weary sometimes, and they focus on that a little bit.
Sure.
What else is happening? Let's talk. Are we done with politics?
I think we've handled the elections.
Successfully, hopefully. And then let's talk about you're a fabulous art critic, a musician. Your children are wonderful musicians. Tell us about, let's talk about the art, theater or otherwise.
Well,
you have a choice.
The thing that's coming up right away, if somebody sees this broadcast this week, is the Davis Music Festival.
I know, I'm planning to go.
It's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Now, if you're hearing this broadcast, several months after it was recorded, the Davis Music Festival will be in the history books by then.
Yes.
But,
it doesn't matter. It happens every year.
Right, and it's a 3-day event, Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday, and it features a lot of different local musicians. The one that I'm interested in hearing from, I don't know if you know him, but John Hatamiya, the trombonist.
Yes, I've heard of it, him, but I never saw him.
Well, he was
perform.
he was a Davis High student. I saw him play with the Davis High Jazz Band back around. He graduated in 2010, and then he went after he graduated from here. He went and played with the Dave Brubeck Institute Jazz Quintet
at the University of the Pacific.
He did some performances with them. He went to the Manhattan School of Music back in New York. He just graduated in May. And while he was living in New York, he substituted once or twice with the Jazz from Lincoln Center Orchestra, which is not a bad gig if you're a music student.
And especially not a very old one. I mean, just yes.
And he has also performed when he's come home at Christmas time. He's done a Christmas, New Year's vacation performance at Davis High as a fundraiser for the Davis High Jazz Band. And he's done that several years now.
Yes.
So he's been very good about keeping up his local support for the band where he played as a high school student.
Which is very nice.
So he's playing Saturday night at the Vini Wine Bar.
Oh, yes. Right. I read that, yes.
10:45 p.m.
It's a little small there.
Well, jazz is often performed in
it's small.
Compact, cozy clubs. So
well, that's going to be really cozy.
They aren't smoky, compact, cozy clubs like they were back in the 50s.
That's right. But there's a lot of wine.
I've talked to a few jazz musicians who kind of go, it's just different now than it was back in the 60s because nobody's smoking in the club anymore.
That's true. But it's better for our health.
Absolutely.
Yes. And what else?
Well, there's the Davis Shakespeare Festival coming up. Now, I don't have you been out to see the Davis Shakespeare ensembles? This is the group that's presenting
Once.
right out in the gazebo?
Yes.
Right.
But you know what? There was a problem with that.
Go and tell me what you thought the problem was.
Mosquitoes.
Absolutely.
It was a terrible problem. I mean, I really couldn't concentrate. It's fabulous, but maybe that night was so many mosquitoes.
Right.
It was really painful. What was your problem?
Well, some of the same. There was a little bit of road noise from the freeway that you could hear off in the distance.
True.
But
and the acoustic is not very good.
Well, you know, the Davis Shakespeare Ensemble
You're more generous than I am.
Started out 5 years ago with what was initially intended as a one-off show. They did a summer production. It was sort of a single project, and they were happy with the way it turned out, so they decided to do another show the following summer. And, you know, one thing leads to another. They pretty much filled up the gazebo. They were playing, you know, they kind of had outgrown the gazebo in terms of
space.
Right, and there's only so many things that you can do staging wise when you have a performance area that's as small as that.
Especially Shakespeare. I mean.
Right.
Yes.
So this year it's not going to be outdoors. No more mosquitoes.
No. That's wonderful.
It'll be in the Veterans Memorial Theater over there on 14th
nice.
Street.
Very nice.
So
by the library, the public library,
and the high school there.
And the high school, yes.
But this year they have 2 professional actors that they're working with. I don't know if you went last summer, but they had...
No, I didn't.
They had Mark Edwards, who I am told was a Davis High graduate back in the day. I haven't met him and asked him, so I don't want to repeat that as gospel truth, but I'm told he's a local guy. Mm-hmm. And he's moved back here from New York. While he was in New York, he appeared in 2 Broadway shows and a bunch of off-Broadway productions.
He's well known.
Very experienced guy.
Yes.
And then the other actor who's working with them is Matt K. Miller, who's been in numerous Sacramento Theater Company shows.
Oh, yes.
He's played Scrooge a bunch of times. He's played Iago.
Yes. He has a very wide repertoire.
Well, most recently he played Rabbi Lawrence, as they called him, in a production of The Taming, or not The Taming of the Shrew, Merchant of Venice. I'll get it right.
Merchant of Venice. Yes.
That was set in Verona, New Jersey, and instead of Friar Lawrence, he was Rabbi Lawrence, and so forth and so on.
Well, you know, isn't this a trend? Because I went to Scotland a couple of years ago, and they had these opera. In that case, it was opera, and this was La Bohème, and it was set in New York.
Right.
And the digs weren't so bohemian, like in France. They were pretty nice. And, you know, the characters were all New Yorkers and everything. What do you think about that?
Well, with the Shakespeare comedies, they're all set kind of far away in rather indistinct locations. There's Twelfth Night is set in Illyria or something like that, which is sort of a made up place.
Yes.
And
with a name like that.
Right. And most of the others are set in the forest of Ardennes, or they're these kind of indistinct, exotic, faraway locations.
Yes.
So you can really move the comedies around almost anywhere you want.
And people can relate perhaps a little better.
And in the case of the production that Davis Shakespeare is doing this summer, they're doing Much Ado About Nothing, Beatrice and Benedict duking it out verbally. It's going to be set in the California wine country.
Oh, splendid.
In the 1940s.
Oh!
With a swing band.
Like a movie, a Hollywood movie in a way.
Like that, yeah. That sounds like a reasonable. You can move those comedies all over the place.
Yeah, especially the 40s.
It's a little harder if you're doing the Roman plays like Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar without togas just doesn't quite seem. Harder to do.
Imposing enough.
Right, and then some of the history plays, the ones with King John or King Henry or something like that. They kind of want to be located in a more specific place and time, but the comedies, you can take them almost anywhere.
But when is this going to start?
Well, it's going to start on June the 26th, and then it continues on the
corner.
weekends. Yeah, very soon. And then it continues on the weekends through, I believe, August the 3rd. Now, they're doing 2 plays. We mentioned Much Ado About Nothing. The other one is a show that I'm not as familiar with. It's a small musical. called She Loves Me. It was written in, I believe, 1963. And it's the same songwriting team that the following year wrote a much better known musical called Fiddler on the Roof.
Oh my goodness!
Right. So it's the small musical that they did just before they connected with the big hit musical, and I've not seen a production of it, but it's.
I'm sure you're going to go.
Well, of course I'm going to go. There is apparently a nice production on YouTube that you can prep on if you want to go see it. It runs about an hour and a half. And so forth and so on.
Yes.
Now, Shakespeare festivals are kind of interesting because there are a number of them around Northern California. Have you noticed that most of them are in university towns?
No, I haven't.
Santa Cruz, the California Shakespeare Theater in Orinda, but their offices are in Berkeley. And then
San Francisco, of course.
Right. And so Davis, being a university town, probably a built-in audience for that kind of, college-educated local populace. So the people who are organizing the Davis Shakespeare Festival, it's sort of the next step in the progression. They hatched the little project out in the gazebo. It grew to fill the gazebo. Now they're going to try it in a bigger space and see how it goes.
Even more successful.
Right.
Without the mosquitoes.
Well, we'll see how it goes. I have to tell you, Lynn, that when I was an undergrad at Santa Barbara back in the 70s, we had a visitor in my Shakespeare class. It was Angus Bomer from the Oregon Shakespeare Festival.
Oh.
And he came in and sat down with us, and he said, when we started a Shakespeare festival in an Oregon lumber mill town, people said we were crazy, that people wouldn't come, but
they did.
They did, and it turned into the biggest Shakespeare festival on the West Coast. And I have no idea how big the Davis Shakespeare Festival will get, but it's a
I'm sure.
nice idea,
Yes.
and it seems to fit.
And why do you think people are? Well, I think it's the name Shakespeare. Who hasn't heard of Shakespeare? It's like Michelangelo.
Well, the plays are funny. I mean, the comedies are funny. The tragedies are sad.
Yes.
The reason that people want to see them is because they still make sense, and they're still very absorbing.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but it's still a relief not to have this uppity British accent that they all.
Well, you don't have to be British to do Shakespeare.
No, exactly.
And so there are good American Shakespeare festivals. Now there is one Northern California Shakespeare Festival that isn't in a college town, and that's the one up at Lake Tahoe. Lake Tahoe is they do have a college up there, but it's in Lake Tahoe. There's the Sierra Nevada College, and then there's a community college up there. But I wouldn't say that Tahoe is necessarily a university town. But they've had a long time summer festival there, and it's outdoors, and it has one of the shorter seasons because once Labor Day passes, it's too cold at night to do those plays outdoors.
I didn't know that. You're a wealth of information. Well, you know what? In Lake Tahoe, there are several well-to-do people.
Oh yes.
And that the type of people that would be interested in such a festival.
It's an unusual festival. I talked to their artistic director last summer, and he said that this is the only festival he's ever been affiliated with where every year 50+% of the audience is seeing the festival for the first time because so many of them are people who are there on vacation. Your typical Shakespeare festival builds up a subscriber base of locals who become supporters and want to see it go.
And who own these magnificent homes overlooking the lake.
Well, yeah.
Yes.
I don't think that's going to happen for me, but that's okay.
No, it doesn't. Nor for me.
Right.
Any gossips, any juicy things that's happening in Davis?
Well, I don't. I just got back from a trip, so I could have missed out on a
Where
few of
did
these
you go?
things. Well, I went to Michigan with my mom. My mom was born in Michigan, and she's
lovely.
82 years old, and wanted to see the town where she grew up. So we
very kind.
I did the driving. So.
Oh, it's a long drive.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, we flew there and then rented.
Drove. Yes.
Yeah. Now we've got a couple other things that we should be checking in about.
Yeah, exactly. We have a few more minutes, so.
High school ensembles are roving the world right now.
Oh, yes. They are so magnificent. I'm so glad you brought them up.
The Davis High School Baroque Ensemble has that tour of Italy that they're doing this summer.
Oh, fabulous.
And I forget where the Madrigals are going this year. The Madrigals travel a lot, but
they do.
The high
they
school
are splendid.
Oh, yeah. Well, we are fortunate in this town to have the kind of music program that we do, because a lot of high schools don't have an orchestra at all, and Davis High School has 3 of them.
Yes.
The main orchestra that you have to audition to get into, and then an anyone can play orchestra for people who are taking up the violin as high school students.
Yes.
Or some other string
Well,
instrument.
your son is a cello, isn't
Yeah,
he?
yeah, he's coming back. He's been in Chicago as a graduate student, and he's
Already.
coming
My
home
goodness.
in,
I remember
in July. Right.
He was in high school.
And then Davis High has those wonderful band programs, and
Yes.
they also have a jazz choir and all those things. So the overall music participation at Davis High rivals the participation in sports, which not a lot of high schools can say
Yes. Well, we're just about out of time, and I regret that we don't have another half hour, because you know Davis and the music world and the art world like the back of your hand. So thank you so much for coming in. One word, I'll allow you one word. Which one will it be?
Enjoy the summer.
Good, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for coming in, Jeff. If you'd like to contact Jeff at the Davis Enterprise, you can contact him at
jhudson at davisenterprise.net.
Good.
Make sure it's .net.
.net. Okay, thank you very much. And thank you all for watching. You've been watching In the Studio. I'm Lynn Weaver. From all of us here at Davis Media Access, including the wonderful technical crew, thank you for watching again, and see you next time.